Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the Queers of Time podcast.
I'm Matt.
I'm James.
I'm Kenny.
And I'm Kat.
And this is a podcast to talk about all the gay stuff in the Wheel of Time.
Because we're gay and we like the Wheel of Time.
Before we begin today's episode, we wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible response we've received to the podcast. This is the first episode recording since we launched, and none of us expected to have over 150 downloads in one day. From the bottom of our very gay little hearts, thank you.
We also wanted to give a special shout out to people that not just listened to our first episode, but who were also amazing enough to support us on Patreon. In less than one day, 7 awesome people decided to support us on Patreon. Some of them even before listening to the first episode. So we wanted to give them a shout out. So thank you to our pillow friends Kylie, Kenzie, Beth, Ben and Chiad, Katie, and Morshali. And supporting us as the patron saint of queerness, a feral venerator of Sirrain, we got Lux.
Yes, thank you all so much for your support. It helps us cover the costs of producing the podcast, and it means the world to us. If you'd like to look at our Patreon page, you can find us at patreon.com/queersoftime. We offer early access to episodes, queer book recommendations, the ability to vote on upcoming episodes, and access to unedited video recordings of the podcast. And at the highest level, you get access to my unhinged feral rantings, Kat's not spooky, but mysterious astrology readings, James's harsh but very necessary life advice, and Camille's French spilled expletives.
All right. Again, thank you guys so much. So we really appreciate all of your support. It's been kind of astounding. So in this episode, we're going to cap off our 3-part Pillow Friends episode and talk a little bit about the broader implications of Pillow Friends, some of the tropes that were used, and how we think the series might handle same-sex relationships if it were written today. We'd like to note that we absolutely don't hold anything against Robert Jordan in any way, but as queer people, we do think it's important to examine how we're being represented through a critical lens. So, Kat, did you kind of want to start us off a little bit?
Yeah, you kind of said it, and we kind of said it a couple of times in the past couple of episodes, but I really do want to give Robert Jordan credit, because I think he genuinely he had good intentions, and that is completely valid, and I appreciate that, because for a white, cis, heterosexual dude in the 90s, that's a big deal, especially writing sci-fi fantasy. It is a big deal, and so I don't want to discredit that, but it was, boy oh boy, it was clumsy. It was clumsy, and it's, I think looking at it now even more, it's even more obvious how kind of clumsy it got. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in the earlier books, it doesn't allude to it as much, but when he started getting into like their relationships, and I mean, New Spring was published in 2004, so it's not like he wasn't aware of things at that point. But he still definitely gets props. Like in the 90s, he had all these ideas, and it's not like anything was being published at that time that was super successful as queer romance. The only thing I can think of is the Last Royal Mage trilogy by Mercedes Lackey. Not queer romance, queer fantasy, sorry.
Yeah.
We've had this discussion of the whole phase thing with Pillow Friends, and how that was sort of a reaching point of him trying to do representation, but I just don't think he did it very well, and I think Camille also has some points on that.
So we're recording that basically a few days after that pretty big debate on Twitter, because Rafe called Moraine a lesbian. And it was in no specific context. It was in a for your consideration panel for the Emmys. He was talking to an audience that was probably not queer, probably not very much aware of this issue, and he to try to highlight the difference in the Wheel of Time show compared to other type of TV show. He called Moraine, which is the lead character in the first season, a badass lesbian sorceress, which nice. But also a lot of folks were like, yeah, but isn't she bisexual in the books? And yeah, but how much of her character is bisexual because she's bisexual, and how much bisexuality in the books are due to compulsive heterosexuality? That makes the combination a bit uncomfortable because, yeah, there's a lot of women that are technically considered bisexual, but at the same time, all of their queer relationship happened when they were young, and it's always a phase that they grew out of. And that's not really what bisexuality is.
That is my thing. That is the sticking point for me. It would be one thing if the whole like if Robert Jordan hadn't said the whole thing about it being a phase, fine. Like I would happily accept, yes, my Moraine is bisexual, and there are a number of bisexual women throughout the series, but it's that he says specifically that it is a phase. Pillow friends, like that relationships, it's a phase, and they're supposed to grow out of it.
I mean, it doesn't really call that a phase. It's just that technically it appears like a phase.
Yeah, he calls it... Well, he does make a very inappropriate comment about how you put a bunch of girls in the tower. We said it in the previous episode. Yeah. And what do you expect them to do with all these pent-up emotions? That very much implies that it's a phase. Yeah. Because once they have something else to do, they don't do that anymore because they're not bored.
Yeah. And it implies like the lack of men.
Yeah, but he does have other comments about like Aes Sedai and part of them being bisexual, part of them being lesbian, like compared to the general population. The thing is that some of his comments, there are some contradictions, and especially in the example he gave us in the book, we always have like relationships that ended up when Aes Sedai got raised. In all of the examples that he showed us, the queer relationship happened when they're young, and some characters are definitely described are only being interested by men once they are being raised to accept it, which is the definition like of growing out of a phase. It doesn't really call it that way, and some of his comments are contradictory, but it is what it shows us.
Yeah,
and this is where I hope that the show really, Moraine aside, there's, well, even including Moraine, there's a lot of biphobia still in the LGBT community, and I think Rafe has a really good opportunity to increase the number of explicitly bisexual characters in the show, and to do it in a way that doesn't muddle it up with the whole, it's a trope called lesbians until graduation.
Right.
It's a harmful trope, it's an old trope, and it's the first one that comes to mind when you see a lot of how, in Jordan's own words, if not the series itself, in his own words, you get a lot of sense of that's what he was going for. And I think that Rafe he has a chance to really improve upon what Jordan tried to do with bisexuality.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I really do think that Robert Jordan was learning kind of in real time those intricacies, and I understand that sexuality is complicated. Even for queer people, it is complicated. It's like we've had conversations about like our own like sexuality and identity and all of that, and it is complicated as hell. And so I understand, and I really do commend him for making an attempt to get into it. But like, this is where you speak to other queer people and learn from them directly and hear from them directly, so that you can, be a better informed writer as you're writing, and write better representation.
I think, so much of what we've learned about gender and sexuality has been in the past like decade, really.
Yeah.
It's not to say that it hasn't existed before that.
Oh yeah.
We're still learning.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like it's funny, for example, when you're like, we're all in our 30s. Well, I'm almost 30, but we're all in that like phase of our life. And
I'm not old, but you are.
That's not what I meant. when you have conversation with younger queer folks who have access to language that we didn't even have when we grew up, and we are not old, but even when we were kids, that language was not there for like part of our relationship to gender, part of our relationship to sexuality. So things are moving very fast. And also compared, like when we're talking about tropes, one of the most famous bad trope relating queer people is the bury your gay trope. And that trope happened a lot, but only got highlighted back in like 2014 when I think it was Alexa who died in The 100.
Yes.
And that's really what started the trope getting some recognition and people starting to talk about it as a very bad representation we were giving to queer people.
And I mean, the same thing, like women in refrigerators wasn't a thing until 1999.
No.
So it's just people, like in the information, the way that information is spread now, it's just so fast and so at your fingertips that you can know about these things right away. And you couldn't do that back then. So I get that Robert Jordan probably could have done a lot better, but unless he had a huge circle of gay friends that he was comfortable enough going up to and being like, so tell me how bottoming works.
Can you imagine?
Like, what do you do? Or going up to lesbians and being like, so scissoring, that's real, right? That's what you do? Like, I can't blame the guy. Like, I guess he did really well.
Kat, I think you told me at some point that you had a lot of hope about how Pillow Friends might be handled given episode 6.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've talked, I don't even know how many hours I've spent talking about that episode. I don't think I've ever talked so much about an episode of TV ever in my life before, as much as I talked about that episode. It just, the way that Swan and Moraine were handled in that episode, it was just so beautifully done and handled with so much care. And it's obvious that Rafe just like he is invested in like not only them as a couple together, but also them as individual, well-rounded characters, where, you know, we get this whole like sort of background on Swan. I was not expecting to see as much of Swan as we did, and getting that sort of foundation and seeing where she came from and then seeing where she is now. And then that, like, you know, leading the audience to believe that Swan or Moraine and the Amerlin seat are like against each other, and that the Amerlin seat hates Moraine. And then the big reveal that no, they're lovers instead, which was just like, I mean, for me, it's one of the most beautiful, I guess. Would it be? Is it a love scene? I don't think it's a love scene.
It's a love story.
Love story.
I think the term of their relationship in the show is called being scissor sisters, maybe.
What the fuck, Matt?
So we're also looking for a new host. Ideally, if you are someone that's a little bitchy but quiet, that would be great.
Hey, we're not gonna tell Matt to be quiet. That would be mean.
No, it's just I get tempted from time to time.
James gets tempted to mute me.
Just a tad.
I can't mute you here. It's not Discord.
It's not Discord, that's true.
So since he was making a joke, technically they're still pillow friend. And by the way, if you look at that scene, you can try figure out what happened to all those pillow and what exactly happened during the hours that spent.
I have inspected that scene quite a bit. There were some activities that happened.
I just noticed that they were on a bed. Wait. Did they maybe muss up the sheets something fierce?
I think that's exactly what happened. They mussed up the sheets, something fierce.
You know what? I choose to believe that Rafe brought that full circle.
Yeah, it's just really good.
It was a good scene. I loved that it's a forbidden relationship, but it's not about them being gay, because like the forbidden relationship trope is neat. But it sucks that most of the time when queer people see it, it's the forbidden part is because they are gay and not for something else. And now we got forbidden romance.
it's hot that we have a forbidden romance that's queer, but it's not forbidden because it's queer.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with their queerness.
It's because you have like a bishop sleeping with the Pope, and it's like, ooh, spicy.
Spicy.
And now I'm picturing Pope, whatever the hell he is now, getting dirty with the bishop. Thank you, James, for that.
Oh no, can we? Oh, please.
Oh no.
Who is the current Pope?
Oh God.
Chicka wow wow.
Oh, Pope Francis.
Pope Francis and his staff, the papal staff. Isn't there a papal staff?
Oh my God.
Matt, stop, please.
I don't know.
I kind of want to see if there's like younger pictures of him.
Do you want to see if he was a hottie?
Can we stop that right now?
Oh my God, he was.
Oh no.
He was what?
He was a hottie.
You would be super into him, Matt.
Uh-oh.
Okay, let's see. I'm Googling Pope Francis Young.
No,
my
here
God.
you go. I just put a link in our chat. And don't you dare edit this part out of the episode.
Oh, he looks so conservative.
He looks happy.
Well, it's nope, not going to go down that road. Not going to go. Nope, we're not going to lose our Catholic listeners. Not today.
We can't do this.
We have Catholic listeners.
We love you, our Catholic listeners. We love you very much, and we love your Pope, and we love his Pope Mobile, and we love his papal staff.
Not too much, Sue.
He's a pretty decent Pope.
He's okay. Continuing Kat's thread of how Jordan would do it today, or how the show might do it.
Yeah.
There's other Aes Sedai who were quote unquote pillow friends, and who do you hope to see in the show, like preserved? Because a lot are going to be cut, and that's just a reality.
For sure. Pavara and I can't pronounce this woman's name to spare my life. Cien?
Maybe?
Cien?
I don't know. I'm just guessing.
One of the S word Aes Sedai.
Yeah. Pavara and Cien, I feel like their love story, it could be such a good love story, because they were together when they were both accepted or novices, and then they sort of drifted apart over time, and then spoilers, later on in the series they are united again together for a common cause, and they end up having to work together, and they rekindle. Like I can see it unfolding in my brain of just like that rekindling of like a lost love. And I feel like it could just be like such a beautiful story, especially against the backdrop of like this huge, big task that they are trying to complete together, and the enormity of it. And then also realizing like, oh yeah, us, this was good.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Remember 100 years ago when we used to fuck?
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Why do I have to ruin everything? I'm so sorry.
I know that was just about to say something I think very like sweet, and then James was like, when we used to fuck.
So the thing about Matt is I'm either a blushing Southern Magnolia or I'm just absolutely filthy, and it's up to you to like figure out which one it is and just go with the flow. And right now I'm pure Southern Magnolia. I also love that because I want to see the show avoid what a certain turfy author who lives in the UK did with a certain population of a certain school, and how they're all awful, and if they're not pure evil, they're just greedy. And I want to see the show give us red sisters who are not evil or not antagonists. And Pavara is just like the perfect role for that.
I do have something like regarding Pavara and Cien. The thing is that there's a lot of person who also like a relationship with Android. I'm not very fond of Android for the reason, but I mean, what could be interesting too is that Pavara kind of plays the main role of the Red Sisters that is nice, and maybe she doesn't have to be the only one. So if Android is a character that is being kept, and his relationship, it's like the relationship and what's happening between Pavara and Android at that time is very interesting, but it also not really related to Pavara as we know her in the Tower of the Black Hunt. So maybe that could be two different characters, and then like we keep those two relationships.
The Wheel of Time, the show is for the gays and the gays only. And I'm all for diversity, but if they just force the diversity by giving us like these compulsively heterosexual relationships, like we have Lan and Nynaeve, and that's enough. Like, why do we need more?
We already have a straight couple.
Exactly. We don't need more straight representation. It's like it'd be forced. It would be forced, and it wouldn't make sense for the plot.
It's, you know what? Even worse than forced, it would be woke, is what it would be.
It would be such a woke show if they like had compulsory heterosexual relationships, and I'm just not here for it.
No,
James, or are you not laughing? I'm just trying to. Okay.
I think we need to explain what just happened. James just shared maybe the best picture of any Wheel of Time actor ever, and it's Kate Fleetwood. Do we still have that on our Twitter page? I think we changed it.
We changed it to break that wheel-ussy.
Yes.
So what I want to know, because I'm a bit dumb, is why exactly, James, you put it that reaction?
Because you mentioned not all of the Reds being evil. And I just imagined her saying, like, she has a bit of a dark side.
We'll have to share that picture on, like...
Regardless, we will share this picture.
Oh, it's so good.
It just makes me really happy.
It's so delightful. It's just, yeah.
Kat, is there anything else you want to talk about as far as tropes or, giving RJ credits where credits due and or things like that? Any other?
I mean, I kind of wanted to, and I don't want to go too much into it because we've kind of done it online over the past few days. But, I feel like this is one of those situations where two things can be true. Where, Moiraine being a lesbian, canonically a lesbian on the show, and then Moiraine's bisexuality in the books. It is possible that it's an example of biphobia on the show to have her as a lesbian. It's also completely valid to see compulsory heterosexuality in, what happens with her later in the series, in the books. Yeah. I think it really is one of those things. And that's the thing about sexuality is I don't think there's never just a this way or that. There's so much nuance. There's so much more to it. And I personally love having discussions like this, I try not to get too offended as long as someone's not being like, when people are mean, then that's different.
Right. It's, with rude quote retweets and things like that.
Yeah, that is the perfect example, Matt.
Yeah. The thing is that all of us, we like every gay reading the books will have a different interpretation. We are also like used to living from crumbs, so sometimes we are amplifying crumbs, making them like turning them sometimes in headcanon when they're not really like canon. We can have different interpretation of what the author wants to do in a specific situation. And in our case, we are never going to be able to ask Robert Jordan whether he intended something that way or not, because, it's not there anymore to answer. Right. And, so part of what I wasn't fond of in the discussion that we had on Friday is that it really felt like because Rafe was calling Moiraine a lesbian, since it was by erasure, it was an offense that was so bad that the show needed to like pay for it or something like that. And the thing is that when you start with such a base content that is so fucked up, it's hard to already turn it okay-ish. Moving on, Matt, you had a lot of notes also concerning that topic.
I do have a lot of notes, and this is where the audience finds out that I'm not as feral and unhinged as I like to pretend to be. Yes, well, listen up, because Professor Matt has a history on late 20th century fantasy and queer representation. I agree with Kat, and I'm happy that Robert Jordan tried in his own way to bring more representation to fantasy, but that comes with a huge however of his execution, and I think we all agree that his execution was not perfect. And again, we prefaced this at the beginning of the episode, but I do want to reiterate that we love Robert Jordan and we love the works that he brought to life. Now we're going to paddle him because he's been naughty, and we're going to talk about how he's been naughty. So there's the question of whether he was ahead of his time and whether he has the excuse of the way that he portrayed sexuality. And my answer is actually kind of no. There's an interesting contrast between how he, as a cis white heterosexual man, handled women's sexuality, and which women's sexuality is queerness in The Wheel of Time, because there is no representation of male sexuality that is not heterosexual.
Right.
That's not true. There's 2 named gay characters. And in New Spring, they mention about people in the White Tower that didn't like men. So there's a whole 2.
There's a whole 2. That's true. That's very true. So that said, I kind of want, we always talk, and when I see fights on Twitter, I see, well, there wasn't anything about, like, there wasn't queer fantasy at the time. And if there was, it was all niche. So that's objectively not true. There is a novel called Swords Point by Ellen Kushner, and it was published in 1987. And it's a beautiful world, and I recommend everyone read it. I might actually make it one of my queer book recommendations at one point. But in this world, everyone is casually bisexual. And I mean everyone. There's no assumption of sexual orientation in the novel. And before people say, oh, well, maybe that was just niche. No, the novel actually had a cover blurb about how fantastic it was by a little-known author called George R.R. Martin.
Who's that?
I don't know. He wrote some book about swords and dragons, maybe. But in all seriousness,
he's not writing anymore.
That's true. He's not writing it. He was.
He's retired. He's a retired author.
So we have Ellen Kushner's novel, and we also have the fabulous Ursula K. Le Guin, who wrote 2 novels, The Dispossessed and The Left Hand of Darkness. And while she did operate on a similar gender binary that Robert Jordan operated on, she was much more progressive in her treatment of sex and gender. For instance, in The Dispossessed, bisexuality is really common, and same-sex romantic or sexual pairings come with absolutely no stigmas. And in Left Hand of Darkness, we see a world where humans actually have no, what we would call, biological sex. They are essentially sexless until it comes time to reproduce or mate, and one of the partners chooses a form to take on. And it's a little binary. It's a lot binary, actually, but it was something that had never been done before. And Ursula K. Le Guin was a pretty big name. She's an award-winning fantasy sci-fi author.
Oh, yeah.
So
we hear a lot that Robert Jordan was ahead of his time, and like as a cis white man is doing things better than he could have done. That kind of reminds me, when you hear cute story about a father that is taking care of a child, and everyone is like congratulating to the dad because he's such a good dad, and the bar is so low for father to take part in taking care of their children, and that feels the same thing. The bar is so low for cis white heterosexual men to include queer representation, that when there is some, we're like congratulating that guy because, hey, you did it, man, congrats.
You did the bare minimum.
You did it. And you know what that is? That's misogyny, baby.
Oh, yeah. Because let's not forget the 2 authors that I mentioned were both what? Women.
There we have it.
So, yeah, I think that anyone who says that he's ahead of his time and that there just wasn't anything for him to pull from just doesn't really know the context. He did have access to healthy depictions of queer relationships, especially in the fantasy genre. And he still fell back on the lesbians till graduation tropes and fetishized women's sexuality. We've talked about how he would handle it today, and I sort of think if he were writing this today, let's just pretend that fantasy is where it is now, I think he would actually be better, because I think, and the reason that I'm able to forgive so much is because I think his heart was ultimately in the right place. He just had a lot of biases that he never unlearned. So I do think that if this was published today, we would see if not a lesbian Moraine, maybe a bisexual Moraine who is actually bisexual. And perhaps a gay Galad, because Galad's obviously gay and meant to be with Matt Collin.
I want it so bad. I want I would love, like non-binary Galad is something that's kind of been in my head for a while. I can't remember who on Twitter first, brought up the idea. It could have been multiple people, but like ever since then, it's just, I can't stop thinking about it. And I actually really do want to see it.
Yeah. And, so I do think that it's hard because when I think, did Robert Jordan succeed and did he have an excuse? I think the answer is no and no for me. But again, I want to say I don't hold it against him. And there are authors, Twitter always wants to fight about, oh, well, you have like, if we read something that's older, there's two extremes. Either you have to excuse every bit of behavior and every bias because they weren't of the current time, or you just completely write it off as bigotry and you just completely ignore everything they did. And to excuse Robert Jordan totally would be disingenuous. To quote unquote cancel him for not predicting how our world was going to eventually become is also not good. I think there's a nice middle ground. This is not H.P. Lovecraft, who wrote incredibly racist stuff in an era where people were beginning, if not systematically, at least on the individual level, especially where he lived, to move beyond old racist ideas.
Yeah, they knew better. People knew better at that time. Yeah.
So there's a difference between something not aging very well, which I think every work is just not going to age perfectly, and just outright being horrific. And that's why I'll never really hold it against Jordan, because again, his heart was in the right place. And you just see a picture of the guy doing fencing lessons, and it's so cute. And just want to pinch his cheeks and tweak his beard, and it's just so cute. You couldn't be mad at him.
No, it's like I 100% agree with you, Matt. Like I really do think his heart was in the right place, and I agree. I think if he were to do it, if Wheel of Time was being written now, I think he would do a lot of things differently, quite frankly. Like not just specifically about the queer representation in the series, but just like how female characters are written in general. Like how different things are handled throughout the series. I think he would do a lot of things different. And
anything regarding consent.
Yes.
Because discussion in the world has changed a lot in the past decade regarding consent. Definitely not something that is great in the book, but would have probably improved with the discussions that we had in the past few years regarding that.
I was going to say, like, something should be said about how publishers are probably a little bit involved, especially in the 90s and the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we can only really name less than half a dozen mainstream, slightly mainstream queer books shows that that's not something that publishers were interested in because they didn't think that there was an audience for it. So, I mean, in addition to the two that you mentioned, Ursula K. Le Guin's The Dispossessed and Sword Point, there was also Mercedes Lackey's Last Herald Maid trilogy, which was published in '89. And then in 1996, there was The Left Hand of Darkness by Lynn Fwelling, again, with women. But those are literally the only books I can think of in slightly mainstream fantasy that had any kind of queer characters that were done decently.
And it's just, it's frustrating because, we hear a lot of these book cloaks, which I hate that term, but, that's what came to mind. I hear them and all these bros say, oh, well, it's, just fantasy was just like that. That's all who was getting published back then, and you can't hold it against them. And I always go back to a novel that I recently read called Of One Blood by Pauline Hopkins. It was the first fantasy novel written by a Black woman in America. It was published between 1902 and 1903. It combines elements of Gothic horror, science fiction, and fantasy. And it stars a biracial character who deals with issues of, his heritage. And it's just a phenomenal novel. And of course, in 1902, a Black woman wouldn't get published by a mainstream publisher. But reading the novel, it's so clear that it all goes back to the publishers and their just unwillingness to give us more diverse books, because it's a phenomenal read. It's a short read, but I think it's phenomenal. And it just clearly goes against these, hetero bros who were like, oh no, Tolkien was like the start of fantasy. Like, bitch, Pauline Hopkins was writing about fantasy as a black woman in 1902. So you can just STFU.
I mean, these are also the people that are like, don't like to talk about Mary Shelley. So,
yeah, I mean, the way that female authors are dismissed continually over and over and over and over again. It's like, I mean, this is slightly off topic, but I think it's still like, it ties into this because like the two authors that you named before, Matt, they are women like that wrote novels that had, pretty decent queer representation. But
you know what?
How often do you hear about them?
One day I will do my rant about the French language and some of the misogyny in the French language, and some of the origin into that is basically when the dictionary was being made for the first time. Like there was this circle of men authors that were very well known, and that's the one that we still studying and this kind of thing. There was also like a group of women authors at that time, but they were getting influence and people did not like that. So when the dictionary was written, a bunch of profession term like author, there was a female version of author, and the name just disappeared because when they wrote the first dictionaries, they codified a lot of gender in name because, yes, French has gender everywhere. And there's a lot of, like, in the language, in the French language itself, there's a lot that was changed for misogyny, and especially to ensure that part of this, like, women community of author would disappear. And there's a lot of different reasons, and one day I'll do more research and put a real rant up about that because I need one and I've been asked for one. But yeah, like
I'm looking forward to that.
History like that in French language, where it's basically misogyny appearing because some male author was feeling threatened by female authors. And that was like in the 18th, 19th century.
Yeah, so like, we really see like, women, including women of color, just, doing these things that male authors have been doing and not getting the credit. Or if they got credit at the time, and if they're like Le Guin, she was not dismissed in her time, and she's not being dismissed now. But with a lot of these fantasy bros who read Tolkien and that's it, they try to erase her existence despite the powerful nature of her legacy.
Yeah.
And I can think of one mainstream author who wrote queer representation, but it was science fiction. It was Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, and he was gay. I mean, reading his Wikipedia page and like all the like the science fiction people, like, oh no, it was just speculated that he was gay, but the dude was buried next to his male best friend. I'm sorry, who gets buried next?
Friends.
They were friends.
Just gals being pals.
They were roommates.
They were just roommates.
They were just best friends and when his best friend died, it sent him into a years-long depression, and then he ended up being buried next to him. But anyways, Arthur C. Clarke did write some representation. He wrote queer people, but they were never a huge part of his novels. They were there in bits and pieces, and not in a way that I think we would consider to be harmful. So it's rare, but like even someone like Arthur C. Clarke, who has big name recognition in the sci-fi community, like we remember him for 2001: A Space Odyssey, rightfully so. It's a brilliant book, and the movie's amazing. But he did try to write himself into these stories, and while they do, enjoy, his legacy, they're not as prominent, I guess. And if nobody has objections to me going on one last little itty bitty rant that I had in my notes.
No, you're fine. I was reading Arthur C. Clarke's Wikipedia page. He was gay as fuck.
He admitted that he had sex with men, like in an interview, but he's like, "Oh, isn't everyone bisexual?"
I love it.
Yeah, he was asked if he had a bisexual experience, and his response was literally, "Of course, who hasn't?"
Of course, who hasn't?
I love
And
it.
the reason that I call him gay and not bisexual is that there's no evidence actually of him being with a woman. Like, he was married to a lady for like 6 months and it ended disastrously, and then she like later died, and I don't know. Anyways, so I want to talk about this whole conversation about whether or not Jordan was ahead of his time. Did he have an excuse? And that leads me to a third point that I see a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook just feel, and they feel entitled to, or they feel owed certain things from authors. You see it with George R. R. Martin's, The Winds of Winter, which, yes, I'm also waiting on The Winds of Winter, but for God's sakes, don't harass the man. That's just awful. Stephen King, when he wrote a fantasy novel instead of a horror novel, the fans they eviscerated him, and he got mad at them and wrote Misery, which is his greatest novel.
I did not know that. That is so funny.
Yeah, he wrote what would today be considered a YA fantasy called The Eye of the Dragon. It's a delightful book. It's not really creepy. It's a heroes and dragons and knights type of fantasy, and his fans were pissed, and they told him to stick to horror and to stick to what he knew. So he said, okay, I'll write a story about an entitled fan, and I'll call it Misery.
That's so good.
But I want to talk about diversity in representation in media, and whether we are owed these things. And my general rants or position is that authors don't owe readers the presence of representation in their books necessarily. Some of my favorite novels of all time, ones that I'll defend to the death, have little to no diverse representation. And so in this sense, Robert Jordan was never obligated to present not heteronormative gender roles and sexuality. All this comes with a huge, huge however. And that, however, is what I call opening the door. And what that is once an author opens the door and explores these themes, then there becomes that responsibility to the reader to essentially do these things well and to do them justice, and to not do them in a way that comes off as I'm ticking a diversity checklist, or I'm doing a token thing. They owe it to the readers to do the damnedest good job that they can. And Robert Jordan, he opened that door with the concept of pillow friends. So to me, he did sort of have an obligation to do it well. And I don't think he did, but for the reasons that we've discussed, I don't necessarily hold that against him, and I still love the guy. Does anybody have thoughts on that?
So I agree that no author owns us anything. My only concern is that sometimes for author that actually writes on something that is not like white person, white straight men especially, it's sometimes a lot harder to get known, I would think.
Right.
So it's like, yes, author don't own anyone diversity, but it would be nice if authors that are actually famous were doing a bit more to make maybe the field more diverse, so that people who actually are good at writing about stuff that are not white straight men have a bit more of a voice in the field.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So basically, you want everybody to be like Rick Riordan, because
That's
he did
literally what I was
exactly
going to
that.
say.
Everyone should be Rick Riordan. Yeah.
That's literally what he did, what he does.
He is a cis white heterosexual male that made his own, like, what is it, a publishing house, or is it just a imprint?
It's an imprint. Yeah, it's an imprint.
An imprint where he only like highlights people,
Marginalized
like people of color,
community.
marginalized communities, queer people. Like, that's literally what you should do with your fame. And I'm not going to mention any kind of authors right now that are that popular that could do something like that. So anyway, I think we have a game that we're going to play.
Yes. Okay, so we're playing Igloo Bond Balefire. And just so our listeners know, I did pick a random Wheel of Time book from my bookshelf, which is right next to me, and I opened Lord of Chaos to 3 totally random pages, and the first name of consequence that I saw, like, there was someone named Coriel or whatever. I don't know who the hell the fuck that is. I'm not gonna look that up either. So, like, and I might not even be remembering that correctly, but like the first 3 prominent character names I saw, I chose. And it's sort of fitting that I chose these 3 characters, given how sapphic this Pillow Friends episode is.
You guys should see Camille's face right now. Like,
am I even
the
sapphic?
smile that is spreading from Are you even sapphic?
Are you even sapphic?
Y'all don't want to know what they did.
Camille, do you have...
Y'all don't want to know what they did prior to
Camille, do you have the identity necessary to have an opinion on this thing? I mean, just asking. I'm just going to need to gatekeep your identity real quick here.
Are you even sapphic?
I mean, I have boobs and I have period cramps, and as a result, I am allowed to call myself sapphic.
I thought you were just going to say, I have boobs and I like boobs. And I was like, you know what, that worked.
Yeah, but the period cramps was very bad the last few days.
For people who don't know, when Camille posted on Twitter about Moraine and being a lesbian according to Rafe, someone quote retweeted them, like, questioning whether Camille was sapphic. I'm like, how the fuck dare you question someone?
Wild.
And like, okay, I don't want people to like be mad at that person, but just sometimes when you are answering to someone and like asking whether they are even allowed to take part in a discussion, please just check their account. Please.
It takes 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
Well, I know that this trio is going to just kill all of you. So, without further ado, we have Fuck, Marry, Kill, Egwene, Nynaeve, and Min.
No!
Oh, that's so easy, but I'm also not sapphic, so I don't care.
James is like, I can't be bothered, and Camille's is like disassociating, and Kat's just like, no!
Oh.
I'll go first, so y'all have more time to think. I would igloo... I would igloo Nynaeve because I think it would be a fun time, and she's Nynaeve. Who wouldn't want that experience? I would bond Min because you got to marry your best friend, and I think Min would be a great friend. James, you can shake your head, but this is my thing.
Like, nope.
You can give a different answer. And I would balefire my beloved Egwene because reasons I won't talk about, test spoilers.
I have an answer.
Okay, Camille.
So, I would also igloo Nynaeve because, I'm going to be honest, angry women are hot. So, she can be angry at me. I will not complain. Yeah. However, I would balefire Min because while I like Min, I don't want to like marry Min. I want to be Min sometimes. I mean, because she's like, especially in the early books. In the early books, she has this tomboyish vibe, which I was relating a lot when I was reading that as a teenager, and I really liked her for that. And by the way, I would give anything to get non-binary Min in the show.
Yes, non-binary men.
That would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And also, I would bond Egwene because Egwene is a character that I relate a lot to, and she's super smart. She's incredible. She deserves a lot more than what she got in the book. And also she needs someone that would actually support her ambition. And I love ambitious women, and I would absolutely be fine with her becoming the Armenine, and I would be fine being a warder and like spoiler, but like we are full of spoiler, and I would use all of my sword skills to defend her during that last battle.
Sounds really hot.
So I think that because James has a lot of opinions based on the condescending eye rolls.
No, I'm going to go last. I insist on going last.
Oh, no.
As the game runner, I'm going to say that Kat gets to go last because this affects her the most, and it's really hard for her to.
Kat, why are you cheering? Why do you think I'm going to let him choose? Why do you think he has any power over me?
Because I'm the game runner for today.
Yes, James, obey to Matt.
3 against 1, okay, James.
I'm afraid of Camille, so I'll do it. All right. So to me, the very obvious answer is that you fuck Egwene just because you have to. Because the only other option is you have to marry Nynaeve because then you get that Nunussi all day long.
I think it's just the Nypussy.
You have to get the Nunussi all day long, and you just do what you're told. You just do what you're told, and you accept it, and you love it because you're around this wonderful woman that chooses to be with you. And you will do anything. And then you kill Min because she's a sexy lamp, and who cares?
That is one person's opinion, and all opinions are valid here on the Queers of Time podcast.
They're not, though.
Yes, they are.
The reason I say to Balefire Min is because Balefire Min as she exists in the Wheel of Time, not Balefire Min as her actual potential should be as a character. But as she exists, I'm not interested in Min existing at all. So, Balefire.
Okay, well, Kat. Your time has arrived. Your time is out.
Yeah.
Who is in and who is out?
So this is not going to... The first one is not going to surprise... I'm going to do the easiest first because this should not surprise anyone. I am going to marry the love of my life, Nynaeve. That is easy. That is simple. That's the obvious answer, right? Say it again one more time.
The Nypussy.
The Nypussy. That's right.
The Nywap.
I'm just disconnecting completely from this discussion.
We're also looking for a replacement for Camille because they're just done with us.
They are done. Camille is 100% done with us. Yes, so I'm going to bond Nynaeve. This is the thing, because this is my struggle right now. Min, her energy, is something I find very attractive.
Same.
But it's for the same reason that you, Camille, would want to be Min and would kill her. I find that energy attractive. And so my struggle right now...
Then Iglumin, it seems like there's no struggle. Iglumin and Balefire Egwene.
I know, but I don't want to Balefire Egwene, though. She suffered enough.
That's fine.
She's important. She's important to the story, unlike Min. I'm sorry.
They're all important.
I think we're gonna have to find a fourth podcaster because this is I think this is my last.
It's just going to be an entirely new podcast.
We're getting harassed by one of them for liking men.
This is going to be our last episode because
I think this is going to be it. I'm sorry, guys.
I just don't like men. I'm sorry. I get people like her. Fine. It's fine. I'm allowed to be wrong. I'm a stupid gay.
I understand. She is not. It really is a shame how she's written in the series. Anyway, we can't get into that today. So I guess I'll Balefire Egwene. I'm sorry, Egwene. I'm sorry, Madeline Madden. I apologize.
That's okay. I have bonded Egwene, and I'm gonna show her all the love she needs.
Oh, well, that makes me feel better.
Wow.
There we go.
Okay. At least you ruined it this time, Matt.
On your knees.
Hashtag on your knees.
I hate you all.
You know what? That made me so happy, though.
Anyway, that was the first time we played this game that we've all had different answers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has been.
Look at that.
No one Balefired Nynaeve because they know what would happen.
I don't think it would work. I feel like someone would try, and the Balefire would just be like, no.
Nope.
No,
I ain't touching that. I'm not messing with that.
It's like when Machin Shin was just like, Nynaeve was like, no, you don't do this to my friends. And Machin Shin was like, you're right, I don't. You're correct.
So, I think that is it for today's episode. And with that, I will take us to our outro unless anybody has anything else to say.
No.
Going once, going twice, sold to Matt. So I just want to say once again, we're just floored by the amount of support that we got in our first day. I wasn't knowing what to expect, but all y'all blew it away. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Queers of Time podcast. If you like our show and you want to hang out with us a little bit more, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Quitters of Time.
Quitters of Time.
Quitters of Time.
Quitters of
Quitters of
Time.
At Queers of Time, and our Discord server, because we have occasionally host meet and greets where you can come and hang out with us. All the links are in our bios and in the episode descriptions. And until next time, we will see you. Keep it queer, Randland.
Thank you all for listening. This was Queers of Time, a Wheel of Time podcast. The music is Dance of the Witches by Julius H.